Welcome everyone. My name is Megan Laudrier. I'm this year's GFIT chair, and we are going to give everyone just 1 or 2 more minutes to get logged into the Zoom, and then we will get started in just a few minutes. So hang tight. You're welcome to be on video if you like, or you can stay on mute. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them. So with that, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. I want to be mindful of your time tonight. First of all, thank you for joining. My name is Megan Laudrier. I am this year's chair for the Grants for Innovative Teaching Committee. So this webinar is designed to help teachers who haven't applied for grants before understand the process, and also for people who have applied, get some good tips and tricks for making their application stand out. So if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just ask the question. So we will get started. Starting off with our agenda, we'll go through the mission statements of the league, go through some snapshots of prior grants so you can see some examples, details on completing the application and budget, how to submit your application, the timeline for next year for the 2021-2022 school year grants, and point you to resources and have time for questions. So mission statements for the Junior League of Dallas. This is our mission statement. I'll fly through these, but also the GFIT, the specific committee mission statement is to encourage and support excellence in teaching by awarding grants of up to $2,500 to Dallas ISD teachers for special and innovative projects that would otherwise not be provided for in school budgets. So a couple examples of prior grants. So one, elementary school, empowering our young writers. So this was using Google Docs to have young students put together like a magazine called The Scoop. So there's one good example for you. Another prior grant, middle school. So it was called Rover Explore, and this used the TI Innovator Rover for students to practice coding and actually control these little robots. And third example, one for high school, the solution to our solutions problem. So it was using this GoDirect SpectraViews Plus, which I'm not familiar with, but using a lot of different solutions to figure out some chemistry and to learn chemistry in a fun and unique and innovative way. So those are really examples to get the juices flowing in your brain of something you may want to do, and we'll go through others in more detail shortly. A few key things to know. So first, application resources. Also, I should mention that we're recording this, and we will put the recording on the Grants for Innovative Teaching website so that you'll be able to access it or share it with anybody. So the slides will be available and the video will be available, so you're not worried about writing everything down. So resources available through the Junior League website, which we will link. There's information on there about application instructions, FAQs, approved Dallas ISD vendors, which you have to use for any items you would like to order, and then a link to the grant writing workshop that we're doing now. So let's look at completing the application. So first, let's talk about the title. So the committee reviews over 100 applications, so a good title can really make your grant stick out. So example, a good title is Lego Robot Center. It's descriptive, describes what it's about. An even better example is Creation Center. Kind of talks a little bit more creatively about what's going to happen. And one of the best is Lego My Robots. So it's a fun play on words, but still gets the point across of what's going to happen. So put some thought into your title of your grant application, and it'll help it stand out. You also have to include a project summary in your application. So a couple things is to help us evaluate the grant. Talk about the number of students who are directly impacted. Really focus on the background or the need for the project, especially when we have compelling stories that, you know, funding was cut, or, you know, students have been interested in a club or this kind of research, and why students don't have access to it generally. Those kind of stories really make your grant stick out on the need for the grant. And also educational research. If there's something, you know, supplies that you would like for your classroom, like we've had grants before for specific kinds of chairs or like tools to use while the students sit, that shows that if they're moving, they actually are better at focus. So including any educational research on the project and how it's helped before can be helpful for your grant to stick out as well. Also, if you could include any terminology and acronyms, we're not always familiar, and you are. So if you want to help us learn a little bit, that would be great too. A couple examples for your project summary. So again, a good example, using robots, students will learn coding and presentation skills. So this is again going back to the Lego My Robots example. So that's a good. Here's an example of a better, and I won't read this, but it talks about what you're going to create, a creation center for weekly use. You know, you talk about the timeline of the project, a couple weeks and what you're going to do and what the students are going to work on. We don't always understand from a one-sentence summary what the plan is, so the more descriptive you can be here in the summary, the better. And here's one example of a best summary. So it gives a little bit more detail. It talks about why it's beneficial, you know, giving students hands-on experience, allowing them to explain their thought process, things like that. So obviously this is an example project, but when you're putting together your project summary, really think about the best way that you can describe it, and the more descriptive, the better. And completing the application. So one of the key aspects is innovation. So this is the committee grants for innovative teaching. So we really try to reward grants and select grants that are truly innovative and creative. So they can be innovative in a lot of different ways. There's no specific requirement. It can incorporate technology. It can use technology in a different way. It can incorporate new teaching methods, but anything that is different and innovative that you want to bring to your classroom or part of the school, that's really helpful to explain why it's innovative and why it's different. Objectives and instructions is another part of the application, and we want to make sure that you're defining clear goals that can be tracked through measurable outcomes. So examples of that are, you know, your students are going to take a pre-test, and then they'll do the activity that encourages their learning, and then take a post-test so you can see the measurable results. Doesn't have to be tests, but that can be useful. There are a couple different options in the application that you can select from, but explaining to us how the metrics are going to demonstrate the grant's impact on the students is really helpful and makes your grant stick out. So a couple examples here. So good, the instructional activity is teach coding curriculum. The evaluation is a pre and post test, and the anticipated result is an improved score. That's a good outline of the objectives, instructions, and evaluation. Even better, a little bit more detail, right? It's going to use various media. It's using computer features such as, and it explains that, what's the evaluation tool and what are the results. And then best, even more detail. So explaining what media it's going to work with, what evaluation rather than just a test, it's going to be presentations and articles graded on their understanding of certain skills, and the anticipated results. Has a little more detail too, getting experience with different computer programs and gaining knowledge. So again, these slides will be available if it helps you to review this to kind of get your creative juices flowing on how to describe these objectives, but wanted to go over those as well. So completing the application, you also have to include a timeline for your project. So it's really helpful for us to see a realistic and detailed timeline, including a time gap to be able to order and receive your supplies. An example, this is from a grant, is laying out month by month what's going to happen. So the funds are usually distributed in late September or October. So build in that buffer time, but time period to order supplies, to then set everything up, to have the students start working on their projects, what's going to happen in the spring, and knowing that the grant has to be completed by April 1st. So month by month works really well. Quarters can work well, but showing a detailed timeline of your project helps set you up for success and helps your grant stick out as well. Here is the timeline from our perspective. So right now we are here where grant applications are open. They'll close March 31st. Our committee reviews over the summer. Applicants are notified in August, September, and funds are distributed shortly thereafter. We have a fun ceremony in the fall. This year it was virtual. We hope it will be in person, but likely will be virtual next year as well. You'll also have mid-year reports due December 13th, project completion April 1st, and final reports and receipts due April 11th, 2022. So keep that in mind when you're doing the timeline for your specific project for our GFIT timeline. A couple items as you're thinking of grants to apply for. There are a couple things that GFIT cannot fund based on restrictions from our sponsors. So a couple things, we cannot provide food, snacks, or incentives. So the student with the best project gets a t-shirt. The student who has the highest score gets a trophy. We're not able to fund those. So you can create a different way for students to be recognized, such as at a school assembly, but we're not able to provide any funding for a gift or incentive. Another thing is we can't do any teacher development or travel for teachers. So if you want to be trained in a certain aspect or go to a specific conference, we aren't able to fund that. But if you find funding for that separately, it's a great way to apply for a grant and bring that knowledge into your classroom of how you're going to pass that on to your students. But we aren't, unfortunately, able to fund just teacher development. Another tip is it's not, it's allowed, but it really stands out if you have a field trip only grant in a negative way. So if it's just, I'm going to take my students to, the zoo. That's awesome. What a cool field trip, but we need it to be integrated into a larger curriculum. So it can be, the funding can be used for the field trip in part, but it also needs to be part of a larger curriculum. So think through the logistics and what things are going to cost, but it can't just be, let's go to the zoo. It's let's go to the zoo to learn about animals. And then the students are going to write a report on their favorite animal and integrate it into their learning somehow. So that's just an example I made up on the fly, but try to make sure it's not a field trip only grant. Similarly, avoid a technology only grant. Obviously technology in the classroom is a big benefit, but if you have a grant that's just applying for a number of iPads to include in your classroom, that is a technology only grant that we prefer not to fund. But if you can design that technology in a larger curriculum, that works great. So, you're gonna include a couple iPads to get this software to integrate into your curriculum where the students are going to learn X, Y, and Z. That makes it more innovative and helps your grant stand out. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. But if anyone does have questions, I encourage you to put it in the chat, or we'll have time for questions at the end too. So budget is the next thing. Your application also includes a budget. So this is what the form looks like, and you'll have to fill out all the items that you want, quantity for each, the cost, and the total. We're able to fund $2,500 per grant, and you can only submit one grant per year per teacher. So if your budget exceeds $2,500, we've often had teachers get additional funding from other sources. But if you do that, please make sure to put it in the grant. So if you say, you know, you need $3,000 to complete this project, you know, that's a red flag for us of, well, how are they going to get the extra funding? Because we can't give more than $2,500. And if you say, you know, the PTA has pledged $500 or the school has a budget for $500 for X, Y, and Z, please tell us that. That's very helpful. And then at the end of the year, throughout the year and at the end of the year, note that you'll have to submit receipts with your mid-year report if it's available then, or at least your final report. So you'll want to keep track of the supplies that you order. I talked about this, please list other funding sources. And a small note, we can only grant funds to projects that can be implemented entirely. So if the grant is in two parts, that you're going to do half this year and half next year, we wouldn't be able to fund that. The whole grant and the project needs to be completed by April 1st of 2022. Last thing about the budget is you need to use Dallas ISD approved vendors. So you can look up who those are and find the prices on the website that's on the Grants for Innovative Teaching website. Make sure you include shipping and handling. Sometimes shipping and handling is waived, but make sure you include shipping and handling so that you're under that $2,500 mark, including shipping and handling. And make sure you don't include sales tax either. You can use your school's tax exempt form when doing that as well. So that can help increase the supplies that you can order. Here's just one example of, a budget, how to lay it out. The product, how many you need, cost per unit, and the total, and then the grand total here. You can include any comments, such as, it comes with a 5-year warranty, as in you plan to use it year after year. But please, include detail here, and please include specific products that you're going to order. So, so catch-alls like 25 books wouldn't be helpful here. We would need to list out the exact books that you're going to order and the quantity and price for each of them. So the more specific, the better. And then please double check your math. Timeline for GFIT, we went over this already, but wanted to show you again, this is what the year looks like from our perspective, with some key deadlines that we would want you all to know. And then, Anne, if you're available, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next.
Sure. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. So thank you, Megan. So applications are due Thursday, March 31st, so the end of next month by midnight. So make sure to get them in by that point in time. The online submission URL is noted on this slide. So pretty easy, gld.net, and then Grants for Innovative Teaching. Once you click on this link, and you should be able to leverage the hyperlink in the deck. And then Megan, if you want to go to the next slide, you'll be directed to this page. And on this page, you'll have the opportunity to create your account. So you can see down here where applications under the video are due, March 31st, click here to create your account. You'll click on this link, it'll direct you to a page to fill out your information in order to have an account created, and then you should receive your account details within a couple of days. Once you do submit your your account information, you should get an email to the email address that you provided on that form. And that email address or that email will also have contact information included in case there are any questions, or after a couple of days you do not receive confirmation that your account has been activated. But here on this page as well, on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a link to submission instructions, which are great. They go by step in the actual instructions on how to submit and actually get the applications downloaded from the site. But if at any point in time you have any questions on the process, there is also an email address noted on those instructions for you to reach out to as well. And I'll hand it back over to Megan.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped ahead. I thought
no, that's okay.
The email address, but I think that's at the very end. Thanks, Anne. Also, I alluded to this earlier, but after the applications are all submitted, our committee will meet during the summer to review any grant applications, and we have assigned people to reach out to different teachers and different grants. So including your summer contact info is very helpful. Oftentimes our researchers will reach out to you to discuss by phone, just to get a little more detail about your grant, any missing details, any questions that they have, so that they can make your grant shine in the meeting. Your researcher is your best advocate, so the more detail you can give them, the more you can get them excited about your project, the better your grant will look in front of the whole committee. So including your summer contact info is really important to make sure your researcher can reach out to you with any questions or issues with your application. In August or September, all grant applicants will be notified whether they've been funded for their grant or not. And then, as mentioned, the grant award ceremony will be, I think, next year in September. So a note on funds. Funds are distributed directly to your school. And I know that my understanding is most schools' office administrators handle ordering supplies. So once the funds hit your account, we will let you know, and then you can work with your office administrator to order your supplies that you've already laid out very specifically in your budget. Supplies should be ordered as soon as possible so you can get started on your grant, and please make sure to save your receipts. The next point in the process is your mid-year report in December. We just want to do a check-in and make sure your supplies are ordered, you have everything you need, the project's going off on the right foot, you have questions. So your researcher will be in contact throughout the whole way, but also wanted to note that the mid-year report is a more formal check-in date. And then through the spring, projects will need to be completed by April 1st. So please don't include in your application a timeline that shows the completion after April 1st. It needs to be completed by April 1st. And then at the end of the year, you'll have time to do your final reports that are due on April 11th. So that allows us to collect your receipts and to collect your final reports to understand how the project went and how successful you were, and let us be able to report that back. So it's always helpful for us to have pictures or samples of what the project has completed in your final report. So please make a note to do that as well. We will get to questions. I wanted to point a couple of resources. This is the link that Anne was talking about that has access to the application for next year. This workshop link will be up in 3 to 4 days, and a couple FAQs, and a reminder that the deadline is March 31st at midnight. So with that, I know we gave you a lot of information now, but one of the real benefits of this webinar is to answer any questions that you have, no matter how specific. So if there are any questions, please let us know now. You can take yourself off mute or put something in the chat, or you're welcome to email gfit@jld.net, and we will email you back within 48 hours. So with that, I will pause for a minute and see if there are any questions or tips that we can help you out with. Hi.
Hi,
Yes,
thank you so much for doing this. Sorry, I'm sitting in the dark.
No,
You
it's
just
okay.
look like Do you know the status, and this might not be something that you know, and I will check at my campus as well, but you talked about using certified vendors or approved vendors. Do you know if there is a current list of approved vendors for DISD
Yes.
anywhere?
I will check, but last time I checked, we had a list of approved vendors on our jld.net website. There should be a link that says Dallas ISD approved vendors.
Okay, on your website?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if it's not
Thank you so
there, just email us and I can find you the link.
Okay. This is very exciting. Thank you.
Of course. Stephanie, any other questions, or does anyone else have questions on the call?
I think I think that I know the answer, but maybe you can just tell me again. The project has to be completed by April 1st.
April 1st, 2022. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so our junior league year ends in May. So, like this year, I'm the chair, so I have to do a big final report, taking from all the teachers' final reports. So that's why the project has to be done April 1st. Your report has to be submitted by mid-April so that I can do my final report.
Got it.
And Stephanie, just to confirm, the list of the approved vendors is included in the GFIT frequently asked questions link on that website. So it's included in that document. There are resources there that list those out.
Thank you, Anne.
I think there's been some issues because of the pandemic, and I didn't know if that had been updated, and I thought maybe y'all knew more than I did. So I was just curious.
We do not know more than you do.
Okay.
The link
because I know not a lot, but I thought maybe you knew more. Yeah,
and Anne, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that we link to something through Dallas.
Correct.
ISD.
Yes, we do.
It's not our own link, so it should be updated, assuming the Dallas ISD list is updated.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So that is all the content we had prepared. I'll pause for another minute or two to see if there are any questions. This is your chance to get anything answered, no matter how small or how big. So let us know if you have anything. All right, I am not seeing any questions. If you have any questions, email us, gfit@jld.net. We're happy to help answer any questions as they come up. We would love to have you all submit grants for next year. We're so excited to see the grants completed this year and see what applications we get next year. So if there are questions, please let us know. Otherwise, I think we're all set for tonight. Thank you all for joining. We appreciate it, and hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.